Welcome to this meeting of the Plans Committee on Thursday the 5th of February 2026 for Charnwood Borough Council. Could I ask everyone present please to turn off your mobile phones or switch them to silent. May I remind all of those present that this meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel and that by attending the meeting you're giving your consent to be filmed. A notice with further information has been provided in the public gallery. Under the openness of local government bodies regulations, people may also film or record this meeting, and this is outside of the Council's control. Please note that the Council has a duty of care to its officers where safeguarding concerns are raised. A new officer is presenting an item tonight, item 5A, P/22/1031/2, Markfield Lane, Newtown, Linford, this evening, due to intimidation from members of the public when the item was reported at the meeting on the 13th of November 2025. May I therefore remind members of the public to be considerate of the committee and officers throughout the meeting and to remain quiet unless you are a registered speaker as part of the allocated public speaking slots. While the Plans Committee is a meeting in public, it is not a public meeting. The only contributions from members of the public is through those registered to speak as part of the formal speaking arrangements. Any contributions or disruptions from the public gallery outside the formal speaking arrangements, whether, for example, by speaking or applauding or reaction, or any contributions from officers, members or the committee or public speakers, is unacceptable and may lead to the adjournment of the meeting and members of the public being asked to leave. For the benefit of those watching the live stream and members of the public here this evening, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Councillor Lenny, Chair of the Plans Committee. The other members joining us on the Plans Committee this evening are Councillor Corey Lowesley, who's the Vice Chair, Councillor Boker, Councillor Fryer, Councillor Good, Councillor Haji Nicolau, Councillor Haynes, Councillor Infield, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Seaton, Councillor Smidovic, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Taylor-Durant. The planning officers present this evening are Ms Garbett at the end here, Mr Akram, somewhere, not arrived yet, and Mr. Our lead officer for the evening is Miss Tate. Our Democratic Services officer is Miss Watson. And I would also like to welcome Mr. Howarth, who is our legal advisor for the evening. For those watching the live stream, the planning officer presentation has been published on the website for those who wish to view it, and it can be found on the agenda page for the Plans Committee for the 5th of February 2026. Could I ask that members of the committee use their microphones every time they speak to ensure that the viewers of the live stream and recording can hear the discussion? We have a late request to speak from Mr. G. Hooper, who is an objector regarding item 5B, which is P/25/0782/2, Mantle Solar Farm, Wymeswold. Are members of the committee happy for him to speak, and can you please indicate your agreement by showing your hands? Thank you. If Mr. Hooper's here, we'll allow you to speak when the time comes. We have received an email from a registered speaker for item 5A, which is P/22/1031/2, Markfield Lane, Newtown, Linford, who has requested extra time to speak as a reasonable adjustment under the Equality Act. I have agreed as chair to extend the speaking time by 2 minutes, which we consider a proportionate and reasonable adjustment whilst maintaining fairness to other speakers. Also in relation to the same application at Markfield Lane, Newtown, Linford, neighbouring elected representative expressed a desire to speak the last time the item was reported. This evening, as an exception, on item 3, we have a 3-minute neighbouring elected representative slot in the public speaking public speaking arrangements, so that councillors Harris and O'Shea are able to put forward verbal representations on that item. Speakers will be called forward at the appropriate time and will have 3 minutes to speak, with the exception of any additional accommodation referenced earlier for the objector slot in item 5A. When 1 minute of time is remaining, they will be advised by the Democratic Services Officer, Miss Watson. Right, so we'll move to the agenda now. Item 1. Miss Watson, apologies. Have we received any?
Yes, Chair, we've had apologies from Councillor O'Neill and we've got Councillor Haynes as a substitute.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. And minutes of the previous meeting. Is the committee happy to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of January 2026? And that'll be the people who actually attended. Thank you. Are there any against or abstentions who were at the meeting? Thank you. The minutes of the meeting have been confirmed from the previous meeting and they're correct record, and I will sign them at the end of this meeting. Item 3, questions under committee procedure 12.8. Miss Watson, have we received any questions?
I confirm we've received no questions, Chair.
Thank you. Item 4 is disclosures of pecuniary and personal interests. For information, disclosable pecuniary interests and registrable interest relate to entries that are included or should be included on a councillor's register of interest. Non-registerable interests relate to any other matters. In relation to item 5A on the agenda, P/22/1031/2 Markfield Lane, Newtown, Linford, there is an update report following the meeting on the 13th of November 2025. On the advice of the monitoring officer, members are asked to verbally confirm their position on whether or not they are predetermined and or have an open mind on the matter. Can councillors confirm by saying yes or no that they come to the meeting with an open mind? I've got to ask you all to say yes or no, I'm afraid. Councillor Corey-Loseley?
Oh, I've received a letter from a resident, but I come with an open mind, and I have not responded to the letter. It was an email.
I think this is something different, is it right?
Sorry, Chair. I mean, I think there's some interests that have already been declared, but I think Councillor Fryer is talking about the email that was received, I think, by most members. So each member might wish to declare they've received the email, and therefore, but they approach the application with an open mind. I think the item you just referred to a moment ago within that you just spoke about is advice from the monitoring officer, just asking the members that they can confirm that they are not predetermined and they approach the application with an open mind. So through you, Chair, perhaps if the members would just in order, just go around and just confirm they are not predetermined.
So I think we'll start with Councillor Corey-Loseley and just go round. Thank you. So can you confirm whether you're approaching this item with an open mind?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I am.
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
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 And that's a yes from me, so that's unanimous. Thank you. Miss Watson, have we received any other disclosures of interest?
Yes, Chair. So Councillor Boker has declared an interest in item 5B. That's P/25/0782/2, Mantle Solar Farm, Wymeswold. She's a ward councillor for this area, but has confirmed that she comes to the meeting with an open mind. I've also received a declaration of interest from Councillor Taylor on item 5A. So that's P/22/1031/2 Markfield Lane, Newtown, Linford. That's a non-registrable interest, and that's because the application sits in the division that Councillor Taylor is responsible for as a county councillor.
Thank you. Could I ask if any other members sitting on the committee this evening have received the email, and could I please have a show of hands? Yeah, from Mr. and Mrs. Riley. Can you please confirm that you are approaching this item on the agenda with an open mind again? Thank you. Are there any other disclosures of interest members wish to make? Okay, thank you. So we're down to business with item 5, the planning applications. The first item is 5A, number P/22/1031/2, Markfield Lane, Newtown, Linford. I'd like to refer to our planning officer, Miss Garbett.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I would just like to point out to members that there is an extras report for this item that summarises the representations received since the report was published, and you should have all have received a copy of the extras report. As a result of the extras, there is one amendment to recommendation A in relation to the section 106 contribution for travel packs and the administration fee. In addition to the extras report, I also have a verbal update, which is quite long, so just bear with me. So number 1, page 18 of the committee report, of the agenda, sorry, in paragraph 7.1, there's just an incorrect reference. So it should refer to 38(6) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act and 72 of the Town and Country Planning Act. So that's just a slight error in that sentence. Moving on to the second update, we've received further correspondence from Councillor Snart. For clarity, he wishes to make it clear that the site is within the parish of Newtown, Linford, and Fieldhead is within Groby Parish. And it's also clarified that policy OS1 relates to other settlements, and officers want to point out that this applies to Newtown Linford settlement, but not all of the land within the whole parish. In terms of planning policy, the site is adjacent to the defined settlement boundary of Fieldhead and Markfield. The settlement boundary of Fieldhead and Markfield is defined in the Hinckley and Bosmouth Development Plan, which are shown in figure 9 of the Plan Committee report from the 13th of November, which is page 65 of the agenda. The dwellings on Markfield Lane are within the settlement boundary of Markfield and Fieldhead defined in the Charnwood Local Plan. The proximity of this settlement to the site is a material consideration that needs to be taken into account in the decision. Councillor Snart has also raised concern that there is no reference within the extras to examination document 78 from the local plan examination. This document was raised in one of the late representations, and a copy of which is available on the public file. That document relates to the local plan examination, and the site is not allocated in the local plan, which is made clear in the committee reports. And then further issue, issue 3 on the extras report, there's a minor numbering error in the officer response. So 2 and 3 should read a response to 3 and 4. So apologies for that error. And then in relation to issue 9 on the extras report, which relates to Severn Trent water closures on Markfield Lane, further correspondence has been received. The author wishes to clarify that the concern relates to the frequency and duration of road closures, the location adjacent to the proposed access, and these are emergency works that do not require a temporary traffic regulation order, removing the requirement to inform highways or give advance notice. The works can operate on a 24-hour basis and for extended time. The concern raised by the representation is in regard to traffic movement, highway safety and cumulative impact. And the photos that have been submitted have been added to the online file. It is officers' view that when considering road closures, Severn Trent would be expected to take into account residential accesses, highway safety, traffic movement, and so this is not considered to be a reason to refuse this application. And then a further update in relation to the Hinckley and Bosworth planning application, which relates to the lane and pathway that will join onto this application site. The Hinckley application reference 25-00700/full will be presented at their planning committee on the 10th of February. The papers have been published for that application and are available on the Hinckley website. The recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. So that's the verbal update, and I will move on to just presenting the summary of the proposal. So the proposal is an outline planning application for the demolition of 287 Markfield Lane and the development of up to 115 dwellings with open space and drainage infrastructure. The only matter to be considered at this stage is the principle of the development plus the access. So this is the site location plan. As background information, because I'm aware some committee members weren't on the committee when this application was previously considered. This committee report is an update report for the application, which was considered at Plans Committee meeting on the 13th of November 2025. At the 13th of November meeting, the application was approved subject to Section 106, unilateral undertaking and conditions. It is being brought back to committee to update various matters that have arisen since the committee resolution. Those matters are the mischaracterisation of Hinckley and Bosworth comments. The report sets out the police comments that were received. There is an update on the development plan position as the local plan is now adopted. There is an update on the 5-year housing land supply position, and there is an update on the recommended conditions. The update report sets out the above matters and refers back to the original committee report and extras from 13th of November, which are provided at appendices A and B in the agenda. In light of the above matters, the conclusion and recommendation have been updated. Members are being asked to determine the application in light of the update report, and all of the papers are within the agenda. So in relation to the site itself, the site is located on land between Markfield Lane and Leicester Road, Fieldhead, Markfield. The site is to the rear of existing residential development and is approximately 6.11 hectares of pasture land. The site includes established trees and hedgerows. The site is adjacent to the east, to the east of the site is an adjacent ancient woodland. The topography of the site falls from west to east towards the woodland, and there are unnamed watercourses through the east of the site. The site is within the Charnwood Forest and the National Forest. The site itself and the properties on Markfield Lane are located within Charnwood Borough, and the properties on Leicester Road are located in Hinckley and Bosworth Borough. And that just indicates the surrounding context of the site and the extent of the pasture land and the trees on the site and adjacent to the site. The key issues are discussed within the main report from the 13th of November, and all these issues are covered again in the update report where relevant, referring back to the November report. This is the indicative master plan that's been submitted. The site access is to be taken from Markfield Lane following the demolition of number 287. Built development is to be focused on the western part of the site, with green space retained to the east, the Suds feature and National Forest planting to the east, adjacent to the ancient woodland. A local area of play will also be provided on the site, and general accordance with this plan is secured by condition. There is also a lane located between 213A and 217 Leicester Road that is within the ownership of the applicant. The lane crosses borough boundaries and provides pedestrian access to the site. It also forms an existing vehicular access and pedestrian access to 215 Leicester Road. I don't know if you can see my cursor, they're just there. It's just located from there and it joins Leicester Road. That's the location of that access. The applicant proposes that the lane is used for additional pedestrian cycle access to the site. This is to be secured by a unilateral undertaking to ensure no occupation of the development until the route has been delivered. The route is shown on figure 6 on page 39 of the committee papers if members wish to have a look. The lane is to be resurfaced and lighting provided. The Charnwood, the section of the lane that's within the Charnwood Borough has a resolution to grant planning permission for those improvements, and the Hinckley and Bosworth section of the lane has a planning application for resurfacing and lighting, which will be considered at their planning committee next week and is recommended for approval. So the only matter to be considered in detail this evening is the access to the site, which, like I said, is to be following the demolition of number 287. The road access will be 5.5 metres wide and include 2 metre wide pavements to either side. Noise mitigation fencing is also proposed along the length of the access. This is the National Forest planting plan, which shows there will be a 15-metre buffer to the ancient woodland. So the ancient woodland is this area to the east, and the 15-metre buffer would be along the whole extent of that edge. The conditions proposed secure retention of important hedges and trees are to be retained unless otherwise agreed at reserve matters stage, where the detail of the landscaping and layout of the site will be fully considered. This indicates the location of the site in relation to transport connections. So you can see the existing connections, the road connections, pathway connections, and also the existing bus stops. So the nearest bus stops on Markfield Lane to the site are located here, and the nearest bus stops adjacent to Leicester Road are located here and here. The proposal would also connect the site to Markfield Lane via the access here, and also to Leicester Road via that lane access here as well. In terms of proximity to local facilities and services, the site is located shown here in red, and the location of services within Markfield is indicated on this plan. So the site itself is located close to services and facilities, including shops, a post office, and the primary school, which is located here, highlighted in yellow. So just to summarise, the conclusion and recommendation start on page 18 of the agenda. The proposal is considered against the adopted local plan. The determination of the application must be made in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. The proposal is contrary to the spatial strategy in policy DS1, although the policy includes criteria that recognise the sustainability of the proposal. The site is development of countryside, contrary to policy C1, but the landscape harm of the proposal can be mitigated, as set out in the reports. There are no statutory consultee objections, and all other policy requirements are met. The conflict with policies DS1 and C1 needs to be weighed against other material considerations. The location of the site is considered to be sustainable as it is adjacent to a key rural centre as defined by the Hinckley and Bosworth Development Plan. This weighs significantly in favour of the proposal. The proposal will add materially to the borough housing land supply, which is currently 5.01 years. The site would help to maintain the 5-year supply whilst housing allocations come forward. A condition is suggested to limit the permission to 12 months to ensure this. The proposal will deliver 40% affordable housing above the policy requirement of 30% at a time when there is an unmet need for affordable housing. The National Planning Policy Framework includes key policies, and those policies are all considered to be satisfied by the proposal. All these material considerations weigh in favour of the proposal. Therefore, it is considered that for this proposal in this location, that there are material considerations that outweigh the conflict with the development plan. Therefore, the proposal is recommended for approval, subject to Section 106, the unilateral undertaking, and subject to conditions as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Garbett. We now move on to the speakers for and against this item and somewhere in between, I guess. At the moment, I've got down Mr Hyde as the objector in place of the 3 people that originally came to speak. Are you happy to carry on and do your bit? So if you'd like to come forward. You'll be allowed 5 minutes for speaking, Mr Hyde, and when you've got 1 minute remaining, Miss Watson will let you know.
Thanks,
Thank
Chair. Chair, members, at the last meeting, members were advised of errors in the application and report, and confirmed in the extra report tonight there's still errors in that report. The photos that should have been submitted on the extra report also appear on the website for Severn Trent, so you can actually see what road closures actually happen. I'm here representing Fieldhead and Martfield Lane, and I speak as a resident myself. None of us are paid, and we spent thousands of hours and even years into looking into this and researching into every aspect of this development. Members are now considering this again tonight because a previous meeting left the council exposed to a judicial review, so it must be treated as a fair determination. This is a major development and it does not fail on a single issue, it fails on multiple issues. When working together, the evidence before you shows conflict with national policy, the adopted local plan, unresolved cross-boundary issues and consultee concerns. I'll begin with transport and highways, but I will not repeat every technical detail as I know Councillor Shea will take this up as the former county executive lead member for highways and address these in more depth. The transport assessment supports application relies on traffic surveys from 2017 and 2018 and March 2020, including data collected during COVID. In the report, you will see that it says the report was submitted again in 2023. It was a standard update for collision data. Assuming you make it to the A50 on this application, the A50 has over 48,000 vehicle movements using daily. It's a fast, busy road, which is less ideal for travellers, children, and less mobile. You also then have issue of Crescent Lawn Road, a 40-mile rat run with no dedicated safe crossing, traffic lights, zebra crossings, and these 2 roads both need to be crossed before you reach the facilities in Martfield. The facilities in Markfield are spread out at 1 kilometre from the centre of the site and the doctor's surgery closest shop. And at the moment, the post office that's on that map is closed and the shop, which means that it's further than 1 kilometre. The school is about 1.6 kilometres and the shops on Main Street, which are the closest shops, are 1.4 kilometres, which means you'll have to use a car. By contrast, the later transport assessment prepared in 2023 and 2025 accepted by Highways included Plan P2 232197 and 2 and 25009314 show materially high traffic. That's the nursing home you passed here and currently an industrial site that's going through Hinkley Bosworth currently. Again, I'm sure Councillor Shea will go into more detail. Members are therefore asking to determine this proposal the traffic assumptions of highways authorities that have moved beyond other parts of this network. Members should also note home delivery traffic is not accounted for in this transport assessment, so the vehicle movements that are taking part where grocery shopping, parcel, courier service, takeaways and on-demand food services are also should be taken into account, which isn't in this report. Despite a well-established change in travel behaviour, traffic travel is not identified and quantified or assessed. As a result, the transport assessment further understands real-world traffic demand and cumulative impact, particularly to Markfield Lane and Fieldhead. Members also need to understand Severn Trent can lawfully close this road at short notice for emergency operation work without required notification for Highways. This happened in the summer for 18 days, where 6 vehicles were topping up the reservoir to allow water pressure to the Fieldhead residents as it dropped below 1 bar. This is where the water for Fieldhead and Markfield Lane is fed from. This was due to a pump closure and failure up in Whittick, which has at least been fixed, but we still get them come up and fill that reservoir every year in the summer. So that road closure will continue. When this happens, traffic is immediately dispersed onto Fieldhead roundabout, the A50 corridor routes and the M1 and junction 22. The extra report does not reference the extent of repeated closures despite photographic evidence has been submitted. The absence of the Highways objections does not mean the closures do not occur. It reflects their legal status as emergency work, their frequency, cumulative impact, and do not reflect on the transport assessment. This application relies on pedestrian cycle link right outside that access where the house of 215A Leicester Road is. As you come out, the car can come out and hit you. It's as simple as that. It's not safe. Also, the council also acknowledged the proposal conflict with the adopted local plan and it's not suitable development, but has been attempted to override this conclusion by reinterpreting the same policy, importing the weight of another alternative authority's plan. Hinkley and Bosworth's plan is not your plan. They state Markfield as their settlement as it sits in their boundary. Also, Section 106 by now should have been agreed and it hasn't. For these reasons, I simply submit this application should not be supported by members. Thank you, Chair and members.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hyde. Our next speaker on this item is Mr. S. Lewis Roberts for the Agent Pegasus Group. Mr. Lewis Roberts, are you comfortable with the equipment?
Yes.
Okay, you've got 3 minutes to speak. When you have 1 minute remaining, Ms. Watson will let you know.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the applicant, Davidson's Developments, a family-owned, 5-star rated house builder with a track record of delivering quality housing throughout Leicestershire. The relevant material planning considerations have not changed since the previous decision of this committee to grant planning permission. The site is in a sustainable location on the edge of Markfield, which has a wide range of services and facilities. It is visually well contained by existing housing on Markfield Lane to the north and Leicester Road to the south, and is therefore an ideal location for residential development. There are no technical objections to the proposals from any of the statutory consultees, and I'd like to draw your attention to 3 key responses. The County Highway Authority has confirmed that a suitable and safe access will be provided and has no objections. Natural England has no objections, noting that the development will not have a significant impact on designated sites. The National Forest Company has no objections. In November, the local plan was close to being adopted, and the relevant policies were given significant weight in the determination of this application. The plan has now been adopted and the application remains in general conformity with the criteria listed in policy DS1. As confirmed in paragraph 7.6 of the update report, the development also accords with national policy in the NPPF. This proposal will deliver a mix of house types, of which 40% will be affordable. The scheme will therefore deliver 46 affordable homes, which is a very significant benefit. The Section 106 agreement will also secure financial contributions towards local infrastructure. I can confirm that we have no objections to the recommended condition to limit the outline planning permission to 12 months. This high quality development will make a significant contribution to Charnwood's housing supply and is needed to ensure the council can comply with the housing delivery test as set out in paragraph 8.4 of the November committee report. Furthermore, this condition will ensure that the much needed affordable dwellings will be delivered quickly. It remains the case that the benefits of the development significantly outweigh any harm, and therefore planning permission should be granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis Roberts. Our next speaker is, I think, going to be Councillor Harris of Hinckley and Bosworth Borough Council and Councillor O'Shea of, well, we're not sure whether you're speaking on Hinckley or Leicestershire County. Is he here? Or are you? Right. Are you splitting your time or is just one person speaking?
Yes, Chair, I did notify via email yesterday of the time split.
Is this, they've said there that it would be you speaking for 1 minute and then Councillor O'Shea speaking for 2 minutes.
That's
Is
correct.
That okay?
Yep.
Okay then. So you'll have your 1 minute and Miss Watson will keep a close eye on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, officers and members of the Planning Committee. Thank you for giving me the time to speak this evening. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and Councillor Lambert and on behalf of the residents of Markfield and Fieldhead. You will have seen my original objections buried somewhere within the thousands of pages that accompany this application. This process has been ongoing for nearly 4 years, and while I appreciate the hard work from officers, it's been even harder for the residents who wake up every day with a black cloud looming over them, unsure whether to sell up and move on or to stay put and keep fighting. I'm genuinely perplexed as to how we find ourselves here tonight. Only last month, Charnwood's local plan was formally adopted and this site was not allocated. That raises real concern about the integrity and the value of the local plan itself. A plan that takes years to produce must count for something. This decision is not only the test of this council's local plan, but local plans up and down the country. If unallocated sites can simply be approved, then what's the point in residents engaging in the process? For these reasons, I respectfully urge members to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Shea. You have 2 minutes to speak, and when that time is up, Miss Watson will let you know.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. I will focus solely on highways evidence as this is where the factual position is clearest. The transport assessment for P2210312 is based on traffic surveys from 2007 at Fieldhead Roundabout, 2018 on the A46-A50 interchange, and the 10th of March 2020 M1 Junction 22, undertaken during COVID period. Those flows are projected forward to 2027 using the Tempro growth assumptions. The extra report refers to data from 2022, but it is important to be precise. There is no updated traffic counts, no peak hour surveys, no revised junction capacity assessments undertaken after 2020. The post-2020 information is limited to collision data and a speed survey which addresses safety history, not network capacity or cumulative impact. The core modelling, therefore, remains pre-COVID and unchanged. More recent Highway Authority accepted evidence. The County Council already holds newer transport evidence accepted by Leicestershire County. The Council already holds the evidence accepted by Leicestershire County Council Highways Authority for the same highway network. Later, transport assessments, including P23 21972, the 72-bed care home on Leicester Road, Markfield, was approved by this committee following conditions on highway impacts. The logistics and industrial development also was granted on the A50 at Hinckley and Bosworth, forecast its transport assessment to generate 900 vehicle movements a day. The assessment identifies 98 vehicles AM, 106 vehicles PM at Fieldhead roundabout, 46 to 50 vehicles at peak junction time at M1 junction 22. This is an
Mr.
increase
O'Shea.
of 28 to 32%.
Mr. O'Shea, I'm afraid your time is up,
Okay.
but I think you've impressed upon us the traffic situation. Thank you. Our next speaker is Councillor S. Pritchard on behalf of Newtown Linford Parish Council. Councillor Pritchard, are you familiar with the machinery there?
I believe so.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak. When you have 1 minute remaining, our advisor and colleague, Miss Watson, will let you know.
Okay. Good evening. I'm speaking on behalf of Newtown Linford Parish Council, who wish again to strongly object to this application. At the last planning meeting this was considered, this outline planning was passed by the very narrowest of margins without full information being available to council members. This site lies within Newtown Linford Parish, not Markfield, and Hinckley and Bosworth and Markfield do not support this plan. The application refers to benefits for the village as if the site were in Markfield, which it is not. Markfield already has planning approval for 284 new homes under its neighbourhood plan. This proposal would once again effectively extend development from Markfield into our parish, as did the previous application for 93 homes off of Ashby Road, and without local policy support from Markfield or Hinckley and Bosworth in that case, and without adequate infrastructure planning. Newtown Linford indeed currently has no local plan, but is and always has been classed in the other settlements category of the now approved Charnwood local plan, i.e. suitable for small scale infill only. There is already an 8-home site currently under construction within the village, and those 93 homes within the wider parish. A further 115 dwelling estate cannot be justified, as this site has not been identified as suitable for development in your Charnwood local plan. Indeed, your plan stresses the need to retain the nature of the rural villages within Charnwood, particularly those in sensitive areas such as Charnwood Forest, and not forgetting the proposed UNESCO Charnwood Geopark. This site is not sustainable. There are no local shops, no local post office, and the nearest schools, GP surgeries and pharmacies are already at capacity. Bus services are infrequent, 1 every 2 hours into Newtown Linford, and car dependency is inevitable. Highway safety, we think, is going to be seriously compromised, and traffic impacts have been underestimated using outdated data. The A50 roundabout already exceeds its capacity, and this development will exacerbate congestion and encourage rat running through Newtown Linford and Anstey Village. The loss of connected green spaces combined with lighting and human disturbance have a major impact on biodiversity. A valued stretch of open countryside that contributes to the character of both Markfield Lane and the wider parish. These proposals are unsupported by the Charnwood local plan and would significantly demonstrably outweigh any benefits. We urge you to have faith in your local plan that has taken 10 years to form and refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Our final speaker tonight is Mr. Ward Councillor, Councillor Snart, who called in the application originally. Welcome, Councillor Snart.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You have 3 minutes in which to speak. When you have 1 minute remaining, Ms Watson will let you know.
Could I just say, Madam Chairman, from your remarks at the beginning, hopefully this won't take my time, but you referred to intimidation by my residents. The frustration was there because the actual information that they were discussing wasn't actually correct, and the information has been agreed that it wasn't correct. So it's back to you tonight. So I just wanted to clear that up. And my residents were, I guess, quite angry about the way that some of the actual information within the report was actually presented. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Could I just start now my information? On the 19th of January 2026, the Council approved the adoption of the Local Plan 2021-37. Councillors after councillors, including the leader, stated that adoption of this plan would see the end of any more speculative development taking place if we adopt the local plan. In my speech at the Council, I said the main reason for voting for this local plan was to stop any more development of this kind that has already had a detrimental effect across the borough. Indeed, there is planning permission for 93 dwellings adjacent to the site, not in the plan, already with planning permission. How wrong I was. It has taken 10 years to adopt this plan. Tonight, you have a choice to go with officers' recommendations to approve this speculative development and undermine the planning policies within the plan, or choose to support the policies and the reasons why many councillors at this council meeting approved the plan to stop development that does not conform to the new local plan and reject officers' recommendation. I feel personally dismayed, misled and angry at the my residents who I represent, that after having assurances that over 10 years this plan would stop speculative development, after 3 weeks you are being asked to approve this unwanted development that is not within the allocated sites of the plan. In my view, members of this committee, you need to ask serious questions about the way this planning application has been presented to the committee, with very little detail on certain policies listed in the new local plan. Previously, you have incorrect information about this application within committee papers. You are now being asked to support the indefensible in policy terms. I now some of the local plan policies that are in conflict with the proposal. I do not have time to elaborate, but many members, you have time to question officers how they conclude to recommend approval on this speculative development. DS1, spatial strategy. New build development will be confined to sites allocated in the local plan. This is not in the plan, agreed in the officer's report. DS2, housing allocation, site not in the housing allocation. CS1, countryside, site within the countryside next to ancient woodland. OS1, other settlements, deliver allocations in accordance with policy DS2. Is small scale and within defined limits to development. This is not small scale. EV1, Charnwood Forest, protects entrance and biodiversity. In my limited time allowed to me, I believe I've given enough information to refuse this application and preserve the integrity of the new local plan. Otherwise, a waste of 10 years of this plan to come forward in the protection councillors voted on the 19th of January.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam
Councillor
Chairman.
Smart. Thank you. Ms Garbett, would you like to respond to any of the questions raised?
I don't think there's anything I can add at this point, but I will respond to any questions if anybody has any queries. Thank you.
Is there anything the speakers have voiced that should be in the public interest answered?
I don't think there's anything extra at this stage that I can add.
Thank you. So we now. Oh,
Don't get ahead of myself, but
all right. Right. The committee will now consider the application as presented by the planning officer. If any councillors wish to speak or comment, please raise your hand. Hold on. So that's 2, 3, 4. I've got 4 councillors, all right. I think that'll be it, won't it? 5 of you all together. So Councillor Corey Loseley.
David is the mic. Thank you, Chair. So a couple of bits that I wanted to say. Firstly, and I understand that the county haven't raised any objections, the county highway, sorry, and that is what it is, and they're in charge of highway stuff. But Councillor O'Shea made a good point, and it's something that comes up often, is these out-of-date traffic assessments. Like we see quite a few applications where they're from years and years ago, or they're from like May 2020 when there weren't any cars on the road, or they're right next to a school and it was done at half term. And I do find it frustrating that we don't get up-to-date information from the highways. It's frustrating. And I'm sure as a county councillor, it's something, and a former cabinet member, it's something he's raised with them. But that's beyond the remit of what we're able to do here. They've said it's fine, so we have no choice but to take their word for it. And then secondly, a question I would like to ask of the officers. So, bit of a funny one, isn't it? Because we've had this committee before in November, I think, and we approved it. And that was prior to the adoption of the local plan. For whatever reason set out in the report, we are being asked to consider it again shortly after the adoption of the plan. So just for the clarity of everybody here, and so that we can all hear the council's or the planning authority's position on this, where does that leave us? Because it's not an allocated site, but it is something where we've previously given permission. So that is a very unusual grey area that I think it would be helpful to have some clarity on. Thank you.
Thank you. So the local plan was adopted and it included housing allocations to meet the development needs for housing. That does not preclude people submitting planning applications for speculative development, and we are required to determine those applications and consider them in light of the development plan. So consider whether they accord with policy or not, and also take into account all other material considerations. So just because you have an adopted plan doesn't mean that speculative development can't come forward or can't be proposed. So in this circumstance, the application has been put forward on a site that's not allocated, but we have taken account of all the information that's been submitted. The application has been with us for some time and revised several times, and is now ready for determination. And our consideration, taking account of the development plan and the conflict with policy that has been identified and is clearly set out in the reports, it's our consideration that at this time, this application, there are several material considerations that weigh heavily in favour of approving this application, despite the conflict with some policies in the new local plan.
Okay, thank you. If I may, Chair. Fine, okay. Is the fact that we've already had this before us recently and that there was a resolution to approve it, is that a material consideration?
So members are being asked to consider the application afresh, but it is relevant that when you previously considered the application, the judgment was that obviously several, that you were content with the proposal. So there's some new information that's been put forward within the update report, and obviously the change to the development plan. but you need to bear in mind that previously on lots of matters, you were very content with the proposal. So you need to be mindful of that as well. I don't know if legal want to make any comment as well.
I think in addition to, sorry for you, Chair, I think in addition to what the planning officer's just stated, clearly members need to approach the application with an open mind, and you're looking at it fresh, but obviously you need to be mindful that you have considered the application previously, and you've come to a conclusion to resolve to grant permission subject to conditions in the Section 106 agreement. And during that determination, you've come to the conclusion that the application is acceptable in plain terms. So before you tonight, you have additional information, obviously, to consider when you redetermine the application, but you just need to be mindful of the fact that previously you did find that the proposal was acceptable. And obviously, if you were now to come to a different conclusion based on issues that you previously determined, putting the new information aside, then there may be a question of whether or not you're being inconsistent in your decision making, which potentially, if the application did go to an appeal, is unreasonable behaviour. So members just need to be mindful, you need to be consistent in your decision making.
Thank you, Mr. Howarth. Did you have anything else? Right. Next is Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I do have quite a few questions, so I don't know if you want me to ask them all at once or separately.
Go ahead with the biggies first.
Okay. I don't know if I can pick out which of the big is, so I'll just plough on. Just a couple of questions, probably following what's just been said. Obviously, I didn't sit on the previous plans committee, so how I can take in what happened there, as I'm now a new member of this committee, I'm struggling to understand if I mentioned stuff that was approved last time that I don't think should be approved this time. So I'm just trying to clarify that as well. Also, just one question, that there was mention of the bus stops outside the development, and there's been a lot of weight given to the services all in Markfield. So can I just have some clarity of where those buses actually go to? Do they go to Markfield to take people to what you're saying is the area that they should be going to for sustainability? So question on that. A bit about the local plan. So obviously policy DS1 says that in the local plan that states that such developments of this that are not allocated in the local plan will not be supported. So I don't know how we can give some weight to that when the actual policy says they won't be supported. And that kind of goes on to my sort of question to officers. So can the officer explain what material considerations outweighs that explicit policy position? So if they could just outline what material considerations there are that outweighs that policy that says that developments that are unallocated in the local plan will not be supported. That goes on to the countryside policy, the policy C1. And could officers explain what exemption do they believe that this development meets that goes against that policy that we should protect the countryside? Again, about the housing supply. So the authority has got 5.01 housing land supply, I understand, at the moment. So we do have a 5-year housing supply, and I understand that's a rolling housing supply now that you look at. So could you tell me what the justification is to approve a major development in open countryside outside of the allocated areas when we do have a 5-year housing supply? So I'm not sure how the balance tips on if we didn't have a 5-year housing supply. If you could explain that, please. And I think just going back to the previous one where the legal gentleman has just said about what we did before, obviously, from what I've read, there were objections from Hinckley and Bosworth Borough Council that they were told at the last planning committee that they didn't object, but you've now clarified that they did object to this application. So I think there is new information that's come, and also that the police also had concerns about the footpath and lighting there. So can you just explain how we take that new information into account compared to the decision that was made at the last time this came here? So I'll probably leave it there for now, maybe come back later. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Ms Scarbett.
All right, bear with me because I've got several things to come back on. My colleague's just checking on the bus routes for me, so just bear with us on that. So we can get you the most up-to-date information. In terms of policies DS1 and C1, yes, there is a conflict with these policies, and that is acknowledged. So in terms of the spatial strategy for the borough, this is not a site that is identified as allocated for housing. However, DS1 does also include criteria, and there are several criteria within DS1 which supports that this is a sustainable development and a sustainable proposal. In terms of C1, the site is largely identified as countryside, other than the site access, because the dwelling is actually within the limits to development. So again, there is a conflict with policy C1. And that is highlighted in the report. The other relevant policies of the local plan, however, the proposal is considered to satisfy. So there's conflict with those two policies. The other policies are satisfied. In terms of the material considerations that are considered to outweigh, I will go through those again, so bear with me. So in terms of material considerations, the location of the site is considered to be sustainable because it is adjacent to the key rural centre of Fieldhead and Markfield. The proposal will add materially to the borough housing land supply, which, as you say, is 5.01 years. And as you say, that is a rolling requirement. So every year you update your 5-year supply figures based on what's been built and what's been approved. And so if we don't continue to approve housing developments, we will fall below 5 years. And we are on the cusp, obviously 5.01. So that's another reason why it is considered that to grant permission, that's a material consideration in favour our current 5-year supply position. And then in terms of affordable housing delivery, so the site will deliver up to 115 houses, so that will add to the 5-year land supply, but also it will deliver 40% affordable housing, and our policy is 30%. So that is significantly above what our normal policy would achieve. So again, that is in the context of a severe need for affordable housing, nationally, as well as a need within the borough. It's a very positive element of the proposal. And then additionally, national policy identifies key policies, and as stated in the original report from November, all these policies are considered to be satisfied by this proposal. So taken together, all of those things all weigh in favour of the proposal, and they are weighed against the conflict with the development plan, the conflict with DS1 and C1. So that balancing exercise, in officers' professional opinion, we would recommend approval of this application. Then coming to the next point, in terms of Hinckley and Bosworth Borough Council, so the update report sets out that the comments from Hinckley and Bosworth Borough Council were set out in the original report. So their comments were considered when the application was considered originally in November. Their comments were within the report, summarised in the report. However, the officer report referred to them as comments and not as objections. Now, we've received several comments over the course of the application, and going back to the original comments, they did state objection, and so that objection was never removed. So to correct that, the update report makes it clear that there were objections from Hinckley, not just comments, but those comments were taken into account when the application was considered in November. So I hope that helps clarify that one. And then in relation to the police concerns, the update report sets out the comments that have been received from the police. Those comments weren't set out in the original report. However, their comments and their recommendations were taken into account in the original report. So the update report sets out that they recommend their recommendations regarding lighting and CCTV were taken into account in the original report, and a condition was added in relation to those matters. So although the police comments weren't summarised, the report did take those comments into account and recommended a condition as a result. So just to clarify, it's not new information. Members had that information in front of them. It was, and obviously the police comments were on the file, they were on the public file. They just weren't summarised in the report at that time. So just to make that clear, and I hope that helps. Now, have we found anything out about?
Yeah, so the bus runs to Leicester.
Yeah.
And it stops at different settlements on its way.
So the Leicester, the lane from
Markfield Lane.
From Markfield Lane, the bus service runs to Leicester. Do we know how frequently? Roughly every 2 hours from there, and then I think we're just checking the other route from the south. Bear with us.
Councillor Taylor, do you wish to come back?
I'm just concerned because obviously there's been a lot of talk in your report that it's sustainable because it's right on the edge of Markfield. But from what I'm hearing, there's no public transport to take people into Markfield where they would go to the doctors, to the schools, to the shop. People are not going to go from that side to Leicester to access those essential, necessary services. So I am a little bit concerned how you can say this site is sustainable when there are no public transport links to where you're identifying it is the sustainable services are. So could you just give me a bit of clarity about how that's assessed as sustainable when you can't actually get to sustainable? And I think we heard from some of the speakers that it is quite a distance and it's likely to be then car journeys. So for me, if there's no public transport, I struggle to understand how you can say there's weight given to sustainability.
Ms Garbett.
Right, so bear with us. We're just checking the public transport routes in detail. Right, so in terms of the routes, so the site obviously has the, so just looking at the plan on the screen, the site has the access here, which gives access to those bus stops here, but then there'll be this further access here, which also gives access to the bus stops on Leicester Road. And then I don't think all of the walking routes are on here. There are also various, these are obviously mainly road routes, but there are also walking routes into town. From my assessment, I think if you went by car, I think we worked it out that the school would be a maximum of 1.3 kilometres. So that could be a walking, cycling distance, but you could also go by car. And then obviously that's down here. So there are other facilities closer. So I think reasonably the site itself is within walking and cycling distance.
But no public transport for anyone that has mobility issues or is unable to walk. There's no other alternative apart from if you are able to walk that distance or you drive, but unless you can come back with me with, public transport.
I think given the distances, you wouldn't necessarily I would have to check the public transport routes. I just need to double check it. But from my personal opinion, the site is within walking and cycling distance of those facilities. A direct bus route to those facilities, I would have to double check.
Is that okay for now? And we'll come back to the buses. The next person I have on my list to speak is Councillor Bowcar.
Thank you, Chair. I must go on about the sustainability issue. In my opinion, crossing a busy main road to reach shops that are 1.4 kilometres away will discourage any mother with 3 kids walking that distance. And she will end up shoving the kids in a car and driving. And I also share Councillor Taylor's concern that going to Markfield with no bus service is not the same as forcing them down to Leicester. Why would they go down to Leicester? They'll be going to Markfield. And I live in a relatively unsustainable area, the Wolds, and we have no walking routes. And consequently, when we did a sustainability study some years ago, it turned out 95% of the Wolds villages uses their car for everything that they do, whether it's school, we do have junior schools, but primary schools, but after that, doctors, dentists, travel agents, banks, you name it, they get in the car. I even know some mothers who put their kids in the car to go down the road to Wymeswell Primary School, because again, they have to cross a busy road, the A606 from Haddon to Melton Mowbray, and we have no facility to cross that road. So you're not going to let your 8-year-old go down to the road and cross it on your own, are you? So I'm sorry, but I question whether this site is really sustainable. And I also do worry about the conflict of opinion or direction from officers when we've heard quite clearly that Newtown Linford Parish Council representative told us that they did not support this application, and that saying that Hinckley and Bosworth, it accords with Hinckley and Bosworth plan. Why have we got our own plan? Why are we worrying about Hinckley and Bosworth's plan? We now have our new plan. And actually, I find it quite depressing because I live in the Wolds and I've had to take quite a few speculative developments, that we now have our 5-year supply and we have our new plan. And now you're telling us that this doesn't really protect the countryside. I just find it very odd comment. And actually, it's quite depressing as well, because it's taken us 10 years to get to this point where I understood that we had a watertight local plan that did not support development in the countryside. Now you're telling me that if you can find ways around it, you do support it. So this conflict of opinion and direction I find quite depressing. And in my opinion, there is significant harm from this application, and that is greater than the so-called benefits. And I wasn't at the last planning meeting on this. I wasn't on the committee. I'm only a substitute. And I find it very odd that we're also given advice that because it went through at that committee, which I understand the voting was quite close, that the opinion comes across to me as because it went through then, it should go through now. And I find that very strange. We didn't have our local plan at the last committee, but we now have it. So there's some of my comments. And my last one is that you say that, hooray, we have 40% affordable housing in this application. But how do we know that there is a definite local housing need for those affordable houses? I mean, where's the evidence? I didn't see it in the report anywhere. So in my opinion, humble as it is, there is some conflict with our actual planning policies that have now been adopted, and there are reasons for refusal, in my opinion.
Ms Garbett.
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to refer members to the November report, and it is paragraphs 9, 11, 19 and 9, 11, 20. And that sets out the bus services from north and south. And we have just double checked those are still up to date. So it sets out in 9/11/19 that the Highways Authority confirmed the stretch of Markfield Lane in the vicinity of the properties. There is currently a Hail and Ride bus service and currently 2 Hail and Ride stops. The bus stops location sorry, that's for the new stops. Right, so the bus stops are served by Arriva Service 29, which is hourly, Monday to Saturday, and a Diamond Bus Service 125, which is less frequent, Monday to Saturday service, and is located on the Leicester Road. So those journeys are between Leicester, Colville, Ashby and Swadlincote, and the other service is Castle Donington to Leicester. There is also the bus stop provision on Markfield Lane, and that is shown on the northern and southern verges as well. So we've just checked the A50 services, which are the Arriva services, which is 29, 29A and number 125. And they are 20-minute services at peak times, and they serve Leicester, Colville, Ashby, Swadlincote, Ratby and Groby. I just also want to point out that those were the comments from the Highways Authority, and so they have assessed the application in terms of its sustainability, and they do not object to the planning application. And it's also worth noting that in terms of sustainability, there are 3 elements to sustainability. There's the economic element, the social objective, and the environmental objective. The transport element of the proposal is only part of sustainability. You can provide a bus service, you can provide transport links, you can provide a pedestrian access, you can provide cycle access. People still have a choice of whether to use the car, but we consider that this site does provide all those opportunities for people to travel sustainably to services and facilities.
Councillor Taylor.
Sorry, I can't find where you're saying in the report where that information is, but nothing you've said tells me that anything goes to Markfield that's public transport. So just want that absolutely clear, because I can't find what you're talking about within the report. But it's okay saying, well, there is choice, but I live in a village and I know how people, they're not going to go to a school in Leicester or Coville. They're going to go to a school in either Markfield or Newtown Linford. Living in that area, they're going to send their children to local schools. And there's no way to get from that site, I don't know how many kilometres it is to the Newtown Linford primary school, but it's quite a way away. So I don't see how people live that they're going to go to Leicester from there. So, you know, I understand what you're saying about sustainability, but I'm talking about how people actually live, which is what I'm here to assess. So unless you can tell me otherwise, I can't see how people living in there will get their children to school apart from in a private car.
Ms Garbett.
I think we can only provide the opportunities. We can't force people. We can't tell them to choose different things. All we can do is make sure that those routes and those services are available. We can't force people not to go in their car, but we consider that those bus services are available to larger settlements. We consider that there are pedestrian routes and cycle routes to the nearest settlement, which does provide a level of services and facilities and includes a primary school.
I'm going to move on now to Councillor Hadji Nicolau.
Thank you, Chair. I have one question and a question / concern. The first question I have is actually when we have the new local plan, this new local plan was made by high-level experts, agents with huge expertise and knowledge. Did they know about this application? And if they knew about this application, why did they not involve this application in the new local plan? This is the question. The concern I have is actually this suggestion that new houses, of course, they're coming with new mothers, with kids, etc., that they're established walking paths and cycling paths. Now, if you look at the map, this big gray diagonal line there is the A50, isn't it? It's a very busy road. This A50 brings you actually to Aspie and M1. So people actually from Leicester who try to go to M1, they just go through the A50. So one of your officers mentioned that there are walking paths and cycling paths from this development to cross the A50 to go and access the services in Markfield. I think this is pretty concerning. What's your opinion? Thank you.
Ms. Garbett.
Thank you, Chair. So in relation to the first question, the planning policy team are the team that have produced the local plan, and the local plan is now adopted. Yes, they knew about this application, and that is the planning policy process is a separate process to the planning application process. But obviously, they are extremely closely linked because when we're assessing applications, we use the development plan, which they write. So once you have a local plan, which we now do, we assess every proposal against that local plan and all of the policies within it, as well as national policy. And we consider the application in light of material considerations, which are also relevant as well as the local plan and national policy. So the two elements work together. In relation to the A50, yes, this site is on one side of the A50, and there is a crossing point across the A50, a pedestrian crossing point, and that would need to be used if you were cycling or walking on foot.
Is this crossing point underground? Is it flyover, or it is through the road on the zebra crossing?
It's over the road. It's not an underground underpass. It's not underground, and the walking distance to the primary school from the site is approximately 20 minutes from the site to the school.
I'm not aware of a zebra crossing there. That means there will be a zebra crossing, something, traffic lights.
Through you, Chair. Sorry. It's traffic lights over the A50.
Councillor Infield.
Thank you, Chair. So a comment and then a question for the planning officer. So the comment is in a way a response to Councillor Snart's mentioning of, you know, the frustration that it's taken 10 years to get the area plan in place, and this, he hoped, would see the end of speculative development. I didn't see it quite the same way. I mean, what it does do, of course, which is immensely important, is it removes the tilted balance which gave speculative development an upper hand in the process. Now, we're not in that situation here. What we're being asked to do is to balance the pros and cons of this. And also, I'm quite critical of the area plan. I don't believe that it's a perfect plan, perhaps far from it. So I think there are sites that are allocated that shouldn't have been allocated. And I'd be surprised if every site that was possible, perhaps including this one, was not included. You know, we can't expect perfection from a process as complex and detailed as this. Okay, and my question then is coming back to this idea of sustainable development. Now, some of the critics have said it can't be sustainable development because Markfield's the other side of the road and is not in Charnwood. So I just want the planning officer to clarify that the proximity to a centre with facilities is the important thing, rather than it being dismissed because it's in a different local authority. Thank you.
Ms Garbett.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you're correct. Just because the settlement of Markfield and part of Fieldhead is not in the borough, in our borough, it doesn't mean we can ignore the fact that this site is next to that settlement. That is a significant material consideration. As I said earlier, the Hinckley and Bosworth development plan identifies the settlement as a sustainable location. So the fact that this site is adjacent to a settlement defined as a sustainable location is a significant material consideration which we can't ignore just because our borough boundary is where it is. Thank you.
Do you wish to come back? Councillor Smidovic.
Yeah, it's just an observation. I do have sympathy with the mention of Leicester County Council on the highways assessment. I think they're shocking. I can't do anything about it. What constitutes small scale and where is the dividing line? And equally, what benefits Newtown Linford going to reap from this housing plan?
Ms Garbett.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to find the reference to small scale. It is within policy. But like you say, we don't consider this site to be small scale. But as I say, there is an identified conflict with DS1, so that is recognised. And I think it's C1, isn't it, where the reference to small scale is, I think. Support small scale development. Bear with me. But again, we've recognised this conflict with policy C1. In terms of the benefits to Newtown Linford, the proposal doesn't directly impact the settlement of Newtown Linford. The impacts of the proposal mainly relates to the nearest settlement, which is Markfield and Fieldhead. So the Section 106 contributions, for example, the 106 contributions for NHS facilities and schools, they're directed towards Markfield because that's where the impact is likely to be. So there's no direct impact on the settlement of Newtown Linford. The other element, for example, in terms of open space contributions, so allotment facilities, that contribution is likely to go to Markfield because that's the closest settlement. It wouldn't go necessarily to Newtown Linford, if you see what I mean, because of the proximity between the site and the settlement.
Do you have any more questions, Councillor Smithwick?
I'm trying to formulate one in my mind. Where we had to take the Leicester City overspill in our local plan, is this Markfield arrangement similar, if that makes sense?
Ms Scarborough.
Thank you, Chair. It's a slightly different consideration. So the housing needs of Leicester cannot be met within the Leicester boundary. So those housing needs have been apportioned to the neighbouring districts and boroughs. So in our Charnwood local plan, the numbers of housing that need to be supplied have increased to help meet the need of Leicester. So those housing numbers are now finalised and within the Charnwood local plan. So those numbers take into account. Those numbers are taken into account when we're doing our 5-year housing land supply. So, numbers delivered versus meeting that target. So our requirement has increased slightly, and our 5-year housing land supply is now 5.01 years. So, we're constantly trying to meet those housing needs and stay above that 5-year housing land supply. But that is a rolling requirement, and we need to keep approving developments to make sure we stay above that 5-year figure. Otherwise, we end up in the tilted balance in paragraph 11D of the NPPF, and that weakens our opportunities to refuse development, which is contrary to our development plan.
Can I ask Councillor Fryer to speak next? Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This is a very complicated application as far as I can see. And sustainability, I'm not going down that line because I live in a village that has no facilities. So we're not even a post office. So, and we have 6,000 residents. Right. I'm looking at pages 106 and 107. And I would just like again, because I've lost track a bit, how much of this development or possible development is actually in the borough of Charnwood. I was on site today and I was getting a little bit confused as well. Is it the whole site, a tiny bit of the site? Or how many houses would help was actually in Charnwood? Because as far as I can see, we're having to make this, but if you look at page 107 in the report and the Leicestershire County Council developer contributions, there is nothing there except for Markfield. Well, if we're in Charnwood or in Coldville, I'm getting a bit confused with that. I see that the waste, capacity for waste is going to Coalville, HWRC. So does that mean they're collecting the waste from the properties in Charnwood, but they're not? So I just need, I think, quite rightly, we're taking a long time over this and we're discussing it in detail. But I am now beginning to get a bit confused. So if I could know how many of the properties are actually in Charnwood, nothing seems to be coming to Charnwood, which, okay, if there are no properties, that's fine. But anyway, if I could just have that clarified, exactly where the boundary is and how much of it is Charnwood and how many properties. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So the application site is wholly within Charnwood Borough. So all of the dwellings, up to 115 dwellings, would all be contributing to our 5-year land supply if the application were to be approved. In terms of Section 106 contributions, the contributions made from a development need to be fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind to the application. So if your impact is close, most of the impact is going to be on junctions in Markfield, then those will be the junctions that are improved. If your nearest play facilities that need to be upgraded are in Markfield, then they will be the ones that are upgraded. If your nearest GP surgery is in Markfield, that is the GP surgery that will be upgraded to take these new patients. Obviously, the county council contributions, it's county council wide. So they don't necessarily look at the borough boundaries. They just go for facilities at the nearest facilities, to contributions at the nearest facilities. So the nearest primary school and the nearest secondary school, they think about that on a county-wide basis. But obviously the residents will be within Charnwood Borough and also use the facilities in Charnwood Borough as well. Open space facilities, for example. But in terms of housing, the 115 will go towards Charnwood supply.
Thank you very much to the officer for explaining that. So 115 houses, the Leicestershire County Developer contributions, so there's nothing coming into Charnwood, which okay is fine. I still need a bit of plan. If the properties are in Charnwood, I presume the waste contracts for Charnwood collect them, because it's a contract with Charnwood Borough Council. So therefore, but it's the waste facilities outside Charnwood that will be improved. I know it's a small thing, I know it's a bigger thing to talk about, but this is, I think, is where it gets confusing, is that if the properties are in Charnwood, they're paying their council tax to Charnwood, they're paying everything to Charnwood for such things as waste. And I presume that also would include street cleansing, maintenance of open spaces. I just want that clarified, because this is where it gets messy, and I'd just like to know. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Yes, so they, because the properties are within Charnwood, they would be paying Charnwood council tax, and they would be contributing in that manner to the borough council and also to county facilities as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Sorry to go on and on about this, but just picking up on Councillor Fryer's point. So there's no Section 106 money going to Newtown Linford, even though they're taking all the houses. So you can just clarify that. So there's no improvement, because the bottom of that road, Markfield Lane, where it joins it to Newtown Linford, is a very dangerous, quite blind junction, that there are been quite a few accidents there and incidents as well. So no money's going towards improving that. And I just note as well that Hinkley and Bosworth Borough Council state that Markfield has already met its housing requirements, and this development is going to place extra pressure on there, schools, medical centre, which I've already raised. And then Councillor Fry point that the household and recycling site is actually going to Colville, and the secondary school is in Colville, which is actually northwest Leicestershire. So we're now talking about 3 councils on a cross boundary way, and I'm concerned that Newtown Linford are getting 115 houses that could relate to 300 odd people, 400 with children, but they're not getting any Section 106 to improve any of the services. They do have open space, they have a playground that they maintain, so they're not getting any money to improve any of their junctions or open spaces actually in Charmwood. All the Section 106 money is going elsewhere.
Thank you, Chair. Because of where the site is located, it doesn't impact on the settlement of Newtown Linford. It's within that parish, but it is some distance from the settlement of Newtown Linford, but it is directly adjacent to the settlement of Fieldhead and Markfield. So the impact will be on Fieldhead and Markfield. So in terms of highways impacts, the Highways Authority have looked at which junctions will be impacted, and so they've asked for contributions for any of those that are impacted. So if there's no impact on any junctions in Newtown Linford, then we wouldn't ask for contributions. Similarly for open space, if the residents here are more likely to use facilities in Markfield, we would improve those facilities. Otherwise, we'd be encouraging people to get in the car and use facilities in Newtown Linford, which is not something that we would do. We would be encouraging people to use nearby facilities. So just because the site is within our borough, we need to take account of where it's located and the services and facilities that people are more likely to use, and encourage sustainable opportunities and improve facilities closest to the site.
Can I just come back, Chair? I'm just concerned about community cohesion. We're supposed to be building lovely places within Charmwood that are connected to their community. You're basically telling me that none of these people from this site will go into Newtown Linford. We've got Braggart Park there. We've got that's just a ridiculous statement, I think, in my view, to say that no one from that site is going to head into Newtown Linford, because I think a lot of people will. There's a lot of leisure and pubs and cafes in Braggart Park. So this will have a huge impact on Newtown Linford, and I'm not seeing any mitigation towards that. So they're just going to end up with a blob of houses here that aren't really connected to Markfield because they're on the other side of the A15, but you're saying they're not connected to Newtown. It's just like a blob in a bit of a, well, it's against C1, isn't it? It's a blob in the countryside that you're just building houses on with no community adhesion. And that's where I'm struggling to assess that this is a sustainable site.
Would you like a response to that, Ms Taylor?
I think it's just a comment, but I haven't seen anything in the report that puts anything of the pressure that will be put on Newtown Linford. We know Braggart Park is one of the most visited places in the East Midlands, and there's no mitigation, no funding at all for a site that actually sits on the edge of Newtown Linford. So it's just a comment to put out there for the rest of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Boker.
Unfortunately, on page 106, under recommendation A, is a whole list of open space possible contributions to Newtown Linford. I'm sorry, Councillor Taylor. So there are such things as upgrades at Newtown Linford or Markfield for the cricket club or the tennis club or the Jubilee Park in Markfield. There's outdoor 38,000 for outdoor sports facilities, provision for young people, blah, de, blah, de, blah. But I'm assuming that it needs to be, no, don't put words in my mouth. Yeah, I'm assuming it has to all be agreed under 106, asking the legal man, please. Sorry.
Through you, Chair. Obviously, the heads of terms for the Section 106 are set out in the report, and they will be carried forward into the negotiation between the lawyers. Now, the detail of those heads of terms will be carried forward into the Section 106 agreement. So if in your resolution, for example, the outdoor sports facilities, it talks about possible schemes to include upgrades at Newtown Linford or in Markfield, for the cricket club or tennis club or the Jubilee Park in Markfield, that wording will be used in the definition for that contribution in the Section 106 agreement. So that's the purpose that contribution can be used towards.
Thank you, Mr. Howarth. I have got now, did you want to say anything else, Councillor Boker?
I was just pointing out that that statement on page 106, it still doesn't mitigate some of the major concerns I have for this application.
Thank you. Councillor Seaton.
Thank you, Chair. We're in danger of going down rabbit holes here, I think, if we start talking about waste and who's responsible for what, where, when and why. And I do appreciate the objections that councillors are putting forward, and I do appreciate the objections that the residents have put forward. But at the end of the day, I hate that saying, we've got no, we can't object on highway grounds, and they're all the objections I've been hearing, because highways have passed them, have said that it's acceptable. There's no demonstrable risk or whatever wording they use for it. I have heard that there's already accidents, and there's been a lot of accidents, and we as planners must know, part of our education, that the mitigation is not to improve, well, it is to improve probably what goes on now, but we only have to mitigate the effect of the development, not what is already being caused or a problem. I didn't go today, unfortunately. I wish now I had have done, but of course I go to Fieldhead quite a lot, and there is a service road. Before the main road, there's a service road, a very leafy surface road round it. So, and there is crossing points. I've got the map. I've been up and down on the Google Maps, and there is several crossing points. Not an ideal road. I wouldn't like to walk over there with 3 children, and of course I won't, will I? Even if the school was very near, we know that the majority of people have jobs to go to afterwards, so they drop their children off in a car, the same way as I do when I'm going on to work, because that's the way of life nowadays, the modern way of life. You don't walk your children to school, so we can't base an argument on that, because it's not realistic. The 106 agreements, there's a whole raft of them there. There's a whole raft of money being given to different causes, the National Forest, the county cricket, and just on like that. But what I haven't heard is any kind of objection to it, a proposal that anybody is willing to put forward. The majority of councillors are objecting to it, but there's nothing being put forward, not a single proposal. And I think it's because we can't think of one, not one that will stand up and not be appealed at. Now, we've not been threatened or coerced into saying, well, we've already made a decision on this, we can't go against it. Of course we can go against it with the planning authority, but we need extra information. If we are going to go against it, when we went for it last time, we need to have spoken about something else, some other mitigating reasons for not going against it. And we haven't, because the same objections now are the objections we were objecting to before, and we still let it go through. So, you know, probably somebody needs to come up with a proposal, because, as I say, I think we're going to disappear down a rabbit hole if we're not careful.
Thank you, Councillor Seaton. Councillor Smidovics.
It's just one. Whilst we've been talking, I've been casting my eyes over, and I've missed one point on 9.14 on page 101, where it does say improvements to the operation of the A50, the A511, M1, Junction 22, and the A46 and A50 and other highways. So that policy M14 in the infrastructure of the Markfield Neighbourhood Plan does expect any locally determined element of developer contributions to be utilised for them, for those repairs or upgrading. So to me, that's a positive. And the 40% housing is also a positive for Markfield, if it's going to be Markfield residents. So those are my positives. I've mentioned the negatives.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, that's one of the positives I've picked up about the affordable homes, but I would like a proposal that we don't approve this application based on the conflict with policy DS1, C1 and CC5. I think they outweigh the positives of adding to our housing total and the affordable housing totals. I think for me, the balance tips over to a refusal.
Is that your proposal?
Yeah, that's what I'm proposing, Chair.
Does anyone wish to second that proposal? Councillor Boker, can you put your mic on and say it? For the recording and all the interested
Okay,
viewers.
I will second that.
Thank you. So we've got a proposal to not go with officer's recommendation due to the policies DS1, D1 and DC5, is that?
No, policy DS1, C1 and CC5.
CC5.
Sorry, Chair, through you. So in terms of the recommendation you're putting forward, which has been seconded, as I understand it, what you're saying is that there is a conflict with the two policies in the new local plan. You feel that the material considerations set out in the report, which officers are of the opinion outweigh the conflicts. In your capacity as decision maker, you come to a contrary decision in that you feel that those material considerations are actually outweighed by the conflicts in the new local plan. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So I'll put Councillor Taylor's proposal, seconded by Councillor Boker, to the committee. All those in favour?
That's 4 in favour, Chair.
All those against?
That's 8 against the motion, Chair, so that motion fails.
Oh, thank you. One abstention. 2, 3, 4. Then we have to say, yeah, that's it. We had one abstention that nobody counted.
So just to clarify again, so we'll just take the vote again just for clarity. So in terms of members in favour of the motion put forward by Councillor Taylor and seconded by Councillor Boker, can you just vote again who's in favour of that? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then who's against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And 1 abstention. So that motion fails. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously, we've had a proposal to refuse, and that's not been passed, which leaves us with sort of one recourse, and that's to accept officers' recommendations. There's lots of good arguments made. Councillors, members of the public obviously feel very strongly about this, but I do agree with what Councillor Seaton said earlier. While there are some objections, I don't feel any of them are strong enough to refuse this application. It is right next to Markfield. There's a lot of amenity there. While we were talking, I did a bit of research. It's 18 minutes to the co-op, 13 minutes to the doctors, and there's numerous amenities on Monaster Road as well. So with that in mind, I'd like to propose that we accept officers' recommendations, Chair, and any amendments in the extras report as well.
All those in favour of accepting officers'
Putting my
recommendation?
microphone on, I will second that, Chair.
Sorry, it's because you've got a loud voice. So all those in favour of accepting officers' recommendations and any amendments in the extras?
That's 8 in favour of the motion, Chair.
Any against?
That's 4 against, Chair,
Any abstentions?
and 1 abstention. So that
Same.
motion's carried.
Thank you. Do any of the members require a break? I'll give you till, 5 minutes. Thank you, Councillor Seaton. You didn't use your microphone again. Right, shall we return to the agenda, everyone? We're now on item 5B, number P/25/0782/2, Mantle Solar Farm, Wymeswold. I'd like to refer to our planning officer, Mr. Akram.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, all. Item 5B is for the construction, operation, and subsequent decommissioning of a solar farm with associated infrastructure. Before I move on to the presentation, members should refer to the extras report, which provides updates in relation to amended or deletion of conditions. This is the application site. It's subdivided. The application site itself outlined in red. It's split into 3 separate parcels, and these parcels are connected by an underground cable that runs along narrow lane all the way across there, and the access track right away that only serves the western parcel. This is the site context. So you got the application site in red. You got Wymeswold Village to the northwest of the site. The brown area is the conservation area. The yellow areas defined there are all local nature conservation. So to the north of the western parcel, that's Wymeswold Meadow, which sits between the western parcel and south of Narrow Lane. And you've got the green dashed lines. These define public right-of-way. And there's quite a few, which you've got one which runs through the western parcel there. You've got another one to the east of the western parcel. Likewise, you've got central parcel, and there's another couple which are around the eastern parcel. In terms of area view, you've got the application site again in red. As far as adjoining uses, you've got the poultry farm that adjoins the western parcel, and on the opposite side of the access track, you've got the equestrian facility where my actual cursor is. As far as in the central parcel itself, you've got some overhead lines which run in the north and south direction. There's a lot of scattered dwellings situated around the eastern parcel. As far as in terms of renewable energy, you've got a small solar farm to the southwest of the western parcel at Ridgewell Farm, as well as another solar farm installation at Y Lane. And there are a number of wind turbines, but it's situated, scattered around this stretch of Wymeswold. This is the actual site layout, which shows the blue area for the solar arrays across the various parcel across the site. And you've got the green itself, which is the retained the hedgerows and vegetation itself. This is a typical elevation of the solar panels. What it would be is fixed mounted and south facing, and maximum height would be 3 meters in height. But this kind of gives you different kind of scenarios where you've got, for example, this one provides you a scenario where there's archaeological constraints on site. This is a typical infrastructure, such as you've got the substation control room, you've got transformers and so on. This will be situated within the central parcel where the substation compound, and where you've got these overhead lines that run through the site. In terms of site photos, the first one is an image that looks from Brook Street towards access track, as well as access track and Narrow Lane Junction. And the second one is going up the actual access track Bridleway that leads to the western parcel. These are a few images, panoramic images from the landscape visual assessment, which shows different views within the western parcel. And it just shows if there's any kind of other renewable or any other kind of tall structures, such as a wind turbine at the top photo there. So as far as the landscape mitigation plan, just to explain that, you've got the blue, which is the solar rays across the various parcels. This large area here would be left open, undeveloped, and for biodiversity mitigation, as well as archaeological protection. Similarly, that yellow area. So you've got the light green, which are the woodland blocks, which are being proposed, and the remainder light green would be the trees and the hedgerows across that parcel. It's just to make you aware that you've got River Mantle also, which runs along that along that eastern boundary. And as part of that, there's some mitigation in terms of there's some enhancement being proposed along that boundary. So this is a central parcel. You've got the first viewpoint is from Narrow Lane, a boundary to central parcel, and the boundary to central parcel. And in the backdrop, you could actually see the overhead lines with pylons, and together with a wind turbine at Glebe Farm further down Narrow Lane. The second viewpoint is from Narrow Lane. It's about 300 meters east of the central parcel. It just kind of shows you the context in terms of different build form, but also in terms of how the site itself, the central parcel, slopes upwards. As in terms of the actual site layout for the central parcel, it's a relatively small area to the south of the site, and where you would have some in terms of landscape enhancement, with you've got trees being proposed as part of the hedgerow enhancement along Narrow Lane. You've got woodland block that potentially would screen anything from typically, let's say, a residential property further up. And this large area, again, is biodiversity mitigation and also proposed for skylark mitigation plan. There's also a permissive footpath which is being proposed. Similar to, I forgot to mention, as part of the western parcel, there was one which links from Narrow Lane to the existing bridleway network or public right-of-way. This is the eastern parcel, and it gives you 3 sets of viewpoints for different fields. It shows in terms of one is a context that where the pylons are, where there's an existing small solar farm, as well as any wind turbines. So as far as in terms of that's how the layout is laid out in terms of the solar arrays, but there's significant enhancement being proposed with the woodland blocks and along Narrow Lane, also adjacent to any residential properties. They are being reinforced and enhanced, and likewise with any land which there's the Wolves Farm here. Similarly, there's a woodland block, and also that is allocated for biodiversity. Similarly, this large area to the centre of the site, either side of the public right-of-way, is for skylark mitigation. This area is clear where you've got a grass airfield that is situated at Four Ways Farm. This is typical sections of the public right-of-way. So it's just a few which I thought I'd just highlight in terms of how the sections would run. So you've got the public right-of-way, which is about 2 meters there. And that's the distance in terms of between the hedgerows and the trees. That comes to about 32 odd meters. You've got, that's between field 2 and 3. And you've got similarly different fields where it ranges between 12 odd meters. But it shows you the context in terms of that's where the solar arrays are, where the fencing is, where the hedgerow, and how open the actual for the public right-of-way will be. Key considerations, they are set out within the committee report. As far as planning balance, national planning policy establishes a clear and legal binding direction to transition to net zero energy system by 2050. There is substantial benefit for the provision of renewable energy, which will make a meaningful contribution to national and local renewable energy targets, energy security, and affordability. It also provides clean energy and reduction in CO2 emissions. Other benefits include a grid connection offer, in terms of the good design that includes sensitive layout and positive response to biodiversity, archaeology, and public right-of-way. There's significant environmental benefits that includes on-site biodiversity gain with a 55% increase in habitat units, 18% increase in hedgerow, and over 10% water course units. There's also long-term soil recovery from taking land out of the arable use and allowing it to rest, as the application being for a temporary period of 40 years. There will be no loss of best or most versatile agricultural land, although agricultural use will still be maintained in the form of grazing. There will be some economic benefit and farm diversification over the 40 years. On the flip side of that, there would be moderate harm to landscape character and to the use of the local public right-of-way, which would reduce over time as the planting matures. There's limited residual harm on residential amenity and nearby airstrip users, largely mitigated through the scheme, design, and conditions. All other matters either result in no significant harm or could be addressed through conditions or Section 106 agreement. The officers consider that the proposal is judged to deliver a clear overall benefit, that is that it provides renewable energy. The recommendation put forward to members is to approve subject to conditions as set out in recommendation A and B of the committee report and extras report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Akram. We've now got some speakers on this item. The first one is Mr. G. Hooper, who is an objector. Mr. Hooper, are you familiar with the speaking equipment?
Not at all, but I shall find my way around it. Okay.
Can you show him the little red button, please, Councillor Infield? Is that okay? You have 3 minutes in which to speak, Mr. Hooper. You have 3 minutes in which to speak, and when you've got 1 minute remaining, Miss Watson will let you know.
Thank you, Chairman. I hope that I've read in the press that this application is going to receive approval. So I hope that's not correct. I obviously have 3 minutes to give you some pause for thought. I've heard from Mr. Akram saying about moderate impacts. I'd like to persuade you that actually there are some quite significant impacts from this scheme. We're not opposed on the basis of this, that we oppose the introduction of renewable energies. We're very much supportive of that, but we think this is a bad scheme and actually impacts adversely on agricultural land. The latest national policy was published in the 6th of January and reinforced the view that solar farms should, where possible, be used using industrial land, brownfield land, contaminated land, etc. And only agricultural land should be used where it's necessary, and not best and most versatile land unless there were significant mitigations. This land is best and most versatile land. And the reason that's included as a restriction is to protect food security. Now, food security, people say, well, this nation doesn't have food security. And so why do we worry about it? Well, that's rather like saying that if your boat is leaking, you don't fix it, you just bang another hole in the hull. We need to be doing something about food security, as was highlighted in a report that was only published on the 19th of January, where the government has said that global biodiversity loss is resulting in ecosystem collapse, which affects the UK's food security significantly. So approving this application will really exacerbate that problem. We understand why the landowner supports this scheme, because growing crops is time-consuming, labour-intensive and risky. So generating electricity is much easier way of generating cash. My second point is that the applicant seeks to persuade the committee that there is not a significant accumulation of solar farms in the area, but in actual fact there is. It's already been referred to that the Prestwold Hall scheme is one of the largest in the area. Finally, I'd say that the impact on the landscape is significant. Recently, Rushcliffe Council have faced a similar application and they refused it in order to protect the amenity for the local residents. Our hope is that this council, this committee, will support the protection of the landscape in much the same way. This has a very significant impact on those that enjoy the landscape. It has a significant impact on wildlife. Heard about skylarks, but there's yellow wagtails, there's lapwings, all of them are affected by this application. Habitat loss is very significant. Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm sorry I overran slightly.
That's okay, Mr. Hood. Our next speaker is Mr. W. Phillips, the applicant. Mr. Phillips, are you familiar with the microphone? You have 3 minutes in which to speak, and when there's 1 minute remaining, Miss Watson will let you know.
Oh, okay. Good evening, Chair, Councillors. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name's Will Phillips, Senior Development Planner at Exogen, the applicant seeking planning permission for the Mantle Solar Farm. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the Council, its officers and other stakeholders for their engagement on the application. Planning applications such as this are an iterative process and, following feedback, it's encouraging that there are no statutory consultee objections and that the application comes before you with a recommendation for approval. There is clear recognition at local, national and international level of the urgency to tackle climate change and reduce carbon emissions. Charnwood Borough Council's climate change strategy reflects this, and the proposed development would contribute directly to those aims. The solar farm would generate enough electricity to power around 19,700 homes each year and displace approximately 25,000 tons of carbon dioxide annually, supporting the government's Clean Power 2030 ambitions. This proposal delivers sustainable development by addressing climate change, energy security and biodiversity together. Alongside producing clean energy, the scheme delivers a significant biodiversity net gain. The design includes species-rich grassland beneath and around the panels, new hedgerows and woodland planting, 4 new ponds, and over 15 hectares of land managed for breeding skylarks. The site has been carefully selected. It's not subject to national landscape or ecological designations. It's not in the green belt and does not use best and most versatile agricultural land while supporting farm viability. The surrounding landscape is characterized by gently sloping fields and established hedgerows, which limit longer distance views. Visibility is largely limited to nearby roads and public rights of way within the site. All public rights of way will remain open alongside new permissive walking and horse riding routes. Almost all the site lies within Flood Zone 1. Drainage measures are proposed to slow surface water flows and reduce runoff compared to the existing arable use. Flood modelling confirms the development will not increase flood risk and indicates a small reduction in flood levels within Winesworld. The County Council has confirmed that the development can be safely accommodated on the local road network during construction and operation. Taken together, the proposal delivers clean and secure energy, significant biodiversity gains and improved access to the countryside, and a scheme that sits well within the landscape. Therefore, I urge the Plans Committee to recognise the benefits of this development and respectfully request the planning permission is granted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Philps. Right, so we've now turned to our committee. If anyone has any comments or questions, could you please raise your hand? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of quick questions. Is there any issues with connection to the national grid there? Is there only going to be hold-ups? Because I know there are issues connecting. So that's my first question. Is this site allocated within the local plan for this sort of things, or and sort of connected to that? What's the fields being used for currently? I think are my main questions to start with. Then just going on about the landscape and the visual harm this may cause. So what's the residual visual impact after 10 to 15 years, not just when we plant it? So what that's going to be, and the glare and off there for users of the key footpaths. I think the gentleman just mentioned that it's a bridleway as well. So is that going to be impact on users of those footpaths? And probably my second one is about sort of how close it is to grade 1 and grade 2 listed buildings. So is there any impact on there? So any other thing that needs to be done? So how are we sort of judging the harm that could be caused by sort of grade 1 and grade 2 listed buildings on the area? So I'll leave it at that first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akram.
Right, thank you, Chair. So in terms of the first aspect was about the connection. So you've got on page 147, it talks about under principal section that there's a recent climate power 2030 action plan set by the government to improve grid connection as part of in order to actually get the drive in terms of get the country moving in terms of renewable energy. So as part of that is that you've got National Grid, which I think is called National NESO, which tend to actually first deal with application, but then there's a process in terms of the grid connection. So as far as that, they always consider capacity and everything else through a similar kind of process. So the applicant already has made the first stages, and then after the permission, it boils down to the second stages of that. Yeah. In terms of the residual impact, in terms of so if you from the use of the footpath, if you were trying to look as that potentially is a footpath, the solar panels are no higher than 3 meters in height. If you've got a hedgerow, the hedgerow enhancement would be minimum 3 meters in height, where you've got certain parts, for example, here, you've got hedgerows on either side. So therefore, that would potentially screen in some ways, whether there's a fencing, which is a 2.4, or this solar arrays beyond that. So as far as that kind of impact about glare or anything else, it wouldn't really come into effect. But if there is, I mean, there is in the short term, it's like what the report specifies. When it's installed, when the hedgerow comes in, year 1, you would have that impact. But by year 10, that matures, and then there's that. So over time, as part of it. In terms of the grade, so if you got the conservation area about here, and there's entire section on heritage on page, section on heritage, and that also looks at the grade 1 listed St. Mary's Church, and in terms of the setting and other aspects as well, and the significance. And just to make members aware that Wilmswall itself is situated on a low ground, but where you've got this access track, then it rises, and it's quite heavily screened as well. All of this area is pretty much, you've got a lot of plantation, you've got the equestrian in between. Each of the actual fields, you've got your trees and hedgerows all the way across, and there is like, for example, in terms of mitigation, there is a woodland block being proposed, and to that enhancement as well along there. Hope that answers the questions.
Plan on what the fields are being used for currently?
So the fields, what I recall from my last visit, it was, I think it was agriculture, but it's arable, so I think it probably more cereal crop probably. That's what I think last time what I recall. But in terms of allocation, as far as renewable energy, you got your policy CC4, which talks about it's pretty much, it could be acceptable subject to, let's say, the heritage, the landscape, and the usual. But that similar goes with the scenario whereby what the MPPF and the planning practice guidance actually follow. It follows that same rule. And you will not be able to accommodate this kind of solar farm within like an urban type of area.
Are there any more questions or comments? Councillor Palmer, did you want to speak as well, Councillor Seaton?
Yeah. Okay, I think I'm generally in favour of this because there is a lot of biodiversity net gain. These solar farms can be quite beneficial to wildlife, and yeah, it could, and they can also be used for, the land can also be used for grazing. I do have some concerns about loss of arable land, about food production, but and I do hope that rooftop solar takes off and can kind of eventually replace solar farms or to some extent. But generally speaking, I would be in favour of this this development.
Thank you. Councillor Seaton.
Thank you very much. Solar panels come with a significant environmental cost long before they generate any electricity. The shipping in, the disposal of it, the decommissioning and returning the land, not just to mention the habitat loss. But until we have something better, I think we have to pursue this renewable energy. I think encouraging new builders to put solar panels on roofs, especially on factory roofs and shops, etc. And I can remember in Costco, where I am in Thurmaston, we asked for solar panels. It would have been a fantastic place to have put them, but no. They didn't, and now we're thinking of putting them on green fields. It just seems silly, and I think probably any factory warehouses or whatever that are being built should automatically come with solar panels on the top to generate income for the local environment. But we haven't got that, and what we've got is what is in front of us. So I would like to go with officers' recommendations to accept this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seaton. Do we have any more comments or a seconder?
Madam Chair, I'll second
Councillor
and
Fry,
reserve my right.
yeah. Councillor Boker.
Is that the scale and siting of this development would substantially alter the rural character of the local landscape. The rolling topology of the site, in particular the western parcel, combined with the proposed height of solar panels, fencing and surveillance equipment, will result in a highly visible and intrusive presence from numerous public vantage points. The visual impact does not appear to fully reflect this, given the complex terrain and limited viewpoints used in the submission. The accumulative impact of existing and proposed energy developments across this part of the Wolds is contributing to the progressive industrialisation of open countryside. This area, located within the Wolds landscape character area, holds significant scenic and rural value, and I think should be afforded appropriate protection. If we continue with this large-scale infrastructure, it threatens to permanently alter the setting of the local villages and diminish the unique landscape character. For those that don't know, Wymeswell sits in a bowl, and consequently, the major fear as well is that this will contribute to the flooding, heavy flooding that already exists in the centre of the village, because all the rolling hills are coming down to the centre with Brook Street in the middle, and there is heavy rainfall runoff from all these fields. So I don't know, I'm not an expert, whether this will contribute or not contribute to the flooding in Brook Street, which already floods some smaller cottages. So I understand that the flooding and drainage proposals have been thoroughly looked into by the local flooding authority, but the residents' concerns is that we will have an accumulative impact of flooding in Wymeswell. I just want the committee to be made aware of this. It's also a popular walking and horse riding area. So again, how much amenity value will be sacrificed? So I just want committee to think about those consequences. And I have had one request from Wymeswell Parish Council, which I hope you will give due consideration to, is that the construction period is going to be horrendous. The fields are still very muddy, etc., etc. I don't know when it will commence, but Narrow Lane is called narrow for a reason. And consequently, that road is just going to be, that lane is just going to be a complete mud bath. So I'm hoping officers might consider a condition, if they're minded, if the committee is minded to pass this, that we actually have a 6-month road closure so that all the HGVs that are bringing in all this heavy equipment, etc., on and off the fields, they consider a temporary road closure with access only to the few houses or stables that are actually up Narrow Lane. And I think that would be a very fair condition, because otherwise there's no way that traffic should be going through Wymeswell along Brook Street, and it shouldn't be coming in from the other end. So that's my one request.
Thank you, Councillor Boker. I'm just going to refer now to Mr. Howarth, the legal advisor.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, Chair. Sorry, Councillor Burke, I just want to check, because obviously you've read something from a statement there, and I just want to be satisfied that you're confident that you are approaching the matter with an open mind and you're not predetermined, you're predisposed. Because it reads as if you're talking.
No, it was because because it was a paragraph that fitted what I wanted to
Right.
say. They're not objections. I was merely pointing out some of the issues that could be caused by this development. And I think that's only fair for my residents to say that in the committee meeting.
Okay, I mean, as long as you're satisfied that you are
yeah.
approaching the matter with an open mind and you're not predetermined, that's fine. Sorry, Chair, I can probably come back on the condition as well. I mean, obviously, as members are aware, with conditions, there are 6 tests. For the imposition of a condition, you have to be satisfied it's necessary, relevant to planning, relevant to the development to be permitted, enforceable, precise and reasonable in all other respects. Now, in terms of the test, the main test really is probably necessity. So there needs to be some evidential basis for imposing the condition in relation to requiring a road closure, a TRO or whatever it would be that would close the road. Obviously, in the absence of any objection from highways or any request from highways, it may be difficult to substantiate evidence for that condition and that it's actually necessary and meets that test.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Just a couple more. I don't know sort of much technical detail about these panels, but what about the noise from the inverters and transformers? Is that okay at night? Because obviously it's quite close to some residential properties in that area. And the other question was about the restoration after 40 years. Obviously, the company that are the applicant that's doing this, if they go out of business, what financial or bond is there to make sure that there's money at the end of this 40 years to remove it and put the land back to how it was? So is that covered by a condition, or, you know, because there's going to be lots of these companies popping up if they're not there in 40 years' time, what happens to that land and the removal there? So just some answers to those 2 questions, please.
Thank you. Mr. Akram.
Right. A couple of the points in terms of what Councillor Walker and Councillor Taylor have raised. As far as flooding, so you've got our statutory consultees, whether it's the Environment Agency and likewise LLFA, they both raised no objections. LLFA have recommended a number of conditions, but as far as this proposal is concerned, there is some mitigation as part of the ponds are being proposed on the upper section as well as the lower section. So it's a western parcel, which is, I think, these 2 fields adjacent to River Mantle as well as the lower fields. So they would take some level of excess water as part of it, but there are drainage conditions associated with that. In terms of the landscape impact, that's clearly set out within the report itself. As far as the noise levels, there is a condition which actually restricts it from the actual applicant's noise report, which Environmental Health have come back and they're happy to impose that condition. So that's condition 28, where it talks about the background noise level of anything in terms of that. So about construction traffic management plan and others, you got Local Highways Authority. They've raised no objection, but there's a number of conditions. There's one to do with construction traffic management plan. There's another to do with off-site works in terms of passing bays, and there's a whole load of conditions what they've recommended as part of any approval to be granted.
Can I just clarify, is there any decommissioning guarantee?
Yeah, decommissioning, you've got, so right at the start of the conditions, so from condition 3 onwards, so you've got one which talks about in terms of operational lifetime, and the decommissioning, it talks about in terms of the decommissioning and site restoration scheme and what needs to be carried out. And that decommissioning is within the 6 months prior to that. but there is a condition 4 in the event that the development hereby, permitted ceases to export electricity and so on. There's a 12-month as part of that. So these are standard type of conditions which even the planning inspector would actually attach to any consent, any approval as part of it. And there's also decommissioning what highways have recommended in relation to like a management plan. So that's condition 5.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, there's conditions in there, but what's the guarantee? Because it's great having a condition in there, but if the company doesn't exist, what are you going to do? Take them to court? There is no. So I'm just wondering what bond or something to guarantee that it's okay at the end of the 40 years.
Chair, through you. So in terms of conditions, obviously conditions are enforceable, and if they're not complied with, the council can serve a breach condition notice on the owner of the property and anyone with an interest in the land. Failure to comply with breach condition notice, it's not like an enforcement notice where you can actually appeal an enforcement notice to a planning inspector. A breach condition notice, there's no right of appeal. If someone fails to comply with that, it's a criminal offence. There will also be in that notice as well, there'll be some measure that the council can do works in default and obviously recharge those works to the landowner. If obviously they're unable to recover the amount from the landowner, then clearly they can register a charge against the land. So when the land is next sold, they can recover the amount, or they can go to court and ask the court to order a sale of the land in order to pay off the charge. So there are legal mechanisms to ensure that conditions are complied with.
So just to clarify, that sits with the landowner, not the company that's installing the solar panel.
Breach condition notice can be served on the landowner, anyone with an interest in the land, and anyone that's occupying the land or operating on the land. So the council has a number of people it can look to enforce that against.
Councillor Smidovic.
I was going to ask the same questions as Councillor Taylor, but so you've answered those. The noise, what if it goes above the 5 decibels? What happens then?
Mr. Akram.
Yeah. So thank you, Chair. Right. So this condition, it sets out in terms of what the requirement in terms of decibels. And we've got a regulatory body such as Environmental Health to actually consider that. So if there is a complaint, then there are also other you've got planning legislation, but you also got environmental legislation, which one deals with noise, nuisance, and so on. So therefore, you've got that remit, but the same kind of regulatory departments such as Environmental Health would deal with it.
Can I just ask then, who is actually doing the measuring? Because when we have a house in Loughborough that they're measuring themselves, the council wouldn't accept it unless they come and measure the sound themselves on their machinery. So I just wondered whether it is going to come back to.
Again, through you, Chair. So the conditions 28, obviously condition 28 says the noise rating level as defined under the BS standard from the operation of the development shall not exceed 5 decibels above background sound levels during daytime 7 to 11 and nighttime 11 till 07 periods as measured at the nearest noise sensitive receptors. Now, if the noise is actually above that, then again, the council can serve breach condition notice requiring them to lower that noise or to put in place measures to ensure the noise doesn't exceed that 5 decibels. That's the planning remedy. Clearly, the planning officers just talked about there are other remedies in addition to the planning remedy which run in parallel. There is the ability of the environmental health team to serve a noise abatement notice if it's deemed to be a statutory nuisance, which once it's served, fail to comply with that is a criminal offence as well. So there are 2 measures there. There's the planning breach condition notice, and then there's a noise abatement notice as well.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Are there any more comments or questions?
Chair,
that's okay. Going back to Councillor Boker's concern on narrow lane, condition 24, the new vehicular access hereby permitted, as shown on drawing, blah, 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 shall not be brought into use for a period of not exceeding 1 month before the date it was first brought into use. And then it will be existing vehicular access located to the southwest corner of the field of Narrow Lane. And then it will be permanently closed and reinstated. So a different access will be used into Narrow Lane for a while. And then the environment around it will be reinstated. It's the condition 24 on there. So I think that covers it. But there must be a statutory mud cleansing, etc., and so on in there. I haven't read all the conditions, but a lot of them. So that might put your mind a bit better at rest.
Any more, or have we got anybody making a decision?
Chair, I think a proposal was put forward for acceptance, and I reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Fryer.
So, thank you very much. Having travelled around the country and in Leicestershire, there are a number of sort of solar farms, and they are growing. They can also be beneficial to wildlife. They can also be used for grazing and also for growing things underneath them, because there are paths between them. If anybody's ever gone down the M25 and seen what happens on the solar farms around Heathrow, that gives you an idea. But anyway, I've been through this report. I was on site today, and therefore I am willing to second the proposal that we accept officer's recommendation with all the notes and the extras report. I do think, as an aside, when we have these long discussions at planning meetings, 99% of the time, the applicant, the developer, someone is there. And I'm sure they take in, or I would hope they take into account the comments we make and can build that in to what they are putting forward. They do not want, I wouldn't imagine, to upset any of us or any resident. And therefore, I think this is why a planning committee that has a full discussion can often help the end result. So I'm happy to second the proposal that we accept officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Mr. Howarth.
Through you again, Chair. Sorry, Councillor Seaton. Just to clarify before we go to the vote, that your proposal is in accordance with the recommendation and the amendments to the conditions and the extras report as well. Yeah, and obviously your second. Thank you.
Oh. Thank you. So we have a proposer and seconder that we go with officer's recommendation and the additional information in the reports. All those in favour?
It's unanimous, Chair. So the motion's carried.
Thank you. Right, I think it's all. Item 6 is the list of applications determined under delegated powers, and the report is submitted at the end of the extras report.
Your red cursor, before I forget, thank you. I don't know why we've never had a red cursor before, except this little insignificant arrow. So at least we can see it. Can we sort of, yay for the red cursor, please? Thank you.
You and your high-tech questions, Councillor Seaton. So item 6 is the list of applications determined under delegated powers, which is at the end of your extras report, and it covers from the 1st to the 31st of January. Does the committee have any questions or comments? Come on. Right. I'll close the meeting. Thank you all for your time and effort.